Hi, everybody, and welcome to Metaphysical Insights. And my guest today is Liam Shand, direct from Inverness, Scotland. Liam's a wonderful human being that has been in the field quite a while, but he's got a lot of variety of interests and is doing some ghost tours now, as well as the paranormal groups. And I think you're going to enjoy the show. Hey, we've already got a couple of highs. Um, and feel free to write in with your questions or your comments. I can play some kind of a superhero or something and make them show up magically on the screen. And as we go on, I'll put in some contact information for Liam and his team and such too. So, welcome. And
Yeah, evening, William. Evening, everyone.
excuse the
I should say,
long-winded.
I'm saying evening. It's not evening with you, is it? It's not going to be
It's
evening with everybody.
It's just 2 in the afternoon where I
Yeah,
live, but,
it's 10 o'clock
yeah,
here in Scotland.
yeah. I appreciate you staying up. I mean, 8's not too late, but by the time we're done, who knows?
It's
And,
all right. I've had a wee sleep. I had a wee sleep.
okay. Um, no, I've been looking forward this to a long time because I really enjoy talking to you and just in general, let alone all the interesting things that you're up to. Um, it's hard to know where to start. Tell me Let's talk about your tours first, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So basically, COVID hit, and when COVID hit, obviously everything ground to a halt. So we, as a group, Highland Paranormal Group, we previously, as well as doing investigations, we used to hold what we call open meets, where we would just get together with the public and chat paranormal. And sometimes we'd have guests along and things like that. But obviously, we couldn't do that anymore. And we also knew that quite a few of our followers and people that would come, they lived alone, or they maybe not as mobile and whatnot. So what we started doing on Facebook was we started having regular virtual meets, where we come on and just blather about, yeah, the paranormal and all sorts. And through lockdown, we actually kind of grew as an almost like a paranormal family with a regular bunch of people coming on all the time. So out of that, I promised at the end of lockdown that I would do a ghost walk. Because one of the other things I did through lockdown was I took my phone out and I walked around a couple of places broadcasting live on Facebook. So I did the one after lockdown, and it was very successful, I was told. So I agreed to do another, and basically now I'm doing one a month. They're free. I don't charge for them. We call them a ghost walk, but actually there's history, folklore, everything in there. Inverness has got so many wonderful stories, and we try to link in as much as we possibly can in the hour and a bit that we do the walk. Um, so yeah, it's been real fun. For me, it's been a discovery because I've actually come across stories that previously I wasn't aware of. So I've managed to get a few books that actually give me some of the kind of probably the lost folklore of Inverness and surrounding areas. But yeah, we cover all sorts from witch trials as well, and curses, witches, curses, and everything in it. I mean, there is so much around here. We're so lucky. So it's been great fun to do. I actually did one this week, and that's delayed because of a couple of things in the weather. And I'm back out in a couple of weeks to do another one as well. So it really is fun. And as I've also said, if anyone's in the Inverness area, give us a shout, and I'm happy to come out and if you've got an hour to
Yeah.
waste, I'll quite happily use that hour to take you around part of the town and tell you a few stories.
How do they get a hold of you?
Through Highland Ghosts on Facebook's probably the easiest way. Highland Paranormal Group on Facebook, and it's Highland Ghosts. Or you can email us at highland.paranormal@gmail.com.
Whoops. Hang on. I love it when the computers mess up. Um, Okay, so that's that one, and then Highland
Yeah,
Ghost.
Highland Ghost, sorry, on Facebook. Yeah, Highland Ghosts on Facebook.
Okay, and the email is Highland Ghost.
Sorry, the email's highland.paranormal
Oh,
at
Highland
.com.
dot paranormal.
Yeah. Yeah,
It would help
unfortunately,
if I could spell.
many years ago when we started out on Facebook, for whatever reason, using the word paranormal was frowned upon. So we had to go with Highland Ghosts. And despite the fact on many occasions I've gone through the process of trying to change the name, it never changes. So I've given up now.
Yeah, I used to have, well, my paranormal insights page is para insights because I used that. I couldn't make paranormal work, but para
Yeah,
worked. And
yeah,
I had for 2 or 3 years, that was my page, as
yeah,
a personal, not set up differently. And then Facebook didn't like it, and I had to set up a personal page. Does this
yeah.
look right?
That's our website. Well, that's
Yeah,
not, it's at gmail.com.
at gmail.com.
Highland.paranormal@gmail.com.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so yeah, there's lots of tales and things. I mean, we've got fairies as well, so that's a fascinating subject. The local main cemetery in Inverness is known as Fairy Hill. Um, and there's stories that go back even beyond that into the realms of Celtic legends, Celtic kings and wizards and things like that. But the most famous story is a story around what's called the fiddlers of Tomnahurich. Tomnahurich Hill is the proper pronunciation for the hill.
Okay.
It's actually the hill of the yew tree. Um, but it's known to the locals as Fairy Hill to this day. I think probably because it's easier to pronounce in Tomnahurich. The story goes that two fiddlers had travelled to Inverness to basically busk, to try and make some money from one of the nearby straths. And they'd had a pretty lousy day, hadn't made much money, were packing up, and we're going to head off to the pub for a
Uh,
pint. And they were approached by a strange little fellow in fancy clothes and asked if they would play at a party. And they were a bit reluctant to start off with. However, the man suggested that there was gold involved if they did the party, so they headed off with him, and they headed out of Inverness, towards the hill. They started to get a little concerned because there's next to no houses now. Where's this party? And then, much to their surprise, the man takes them to the hill. A magical door opens, and they find themselves inside the fairy hall, where they're fed and given as much alcohol as they want. They have a right great time. They play their fiddles faster and faster and faster. And then suddenly the wee man reappears and says, "Right, that's it. You've got to go. It's morning." He rushes them to the door, opens the door, gives them their gold, their coins.
uh-huh.
They turn back round to thank him, and both the door and him have vanished. So they then begin to walk back into Inverness, and straight away they think this is a bit weird. There seems to be more houses here than there was last night. By the time they reach the town itself, their locals are pointing and laughing at them. They're dressed very differently to how they're dressed. So the men are now starting to get a little bit scared, to be perfectly honest, and think, right, the best thing, we got to get home.
Right.
So they head home to the Strath, their local area, the Strath, and they find when they go to their houses that there's strangers in their houses. So they're terrified. They don't know what's going on, so they head to the church. And when they reach the church, they see the names of their family and friends on gravestones. And they've died 30, 40 years ago, maybe more. So the men now are absolutely terrified beyond belief. and they head into the church where a service is taking place. They come over the threshold of the church. The congregation turn round to look at them, wondering who's come in mid-service, and the two men simply turn to dust. 100 years have passed in one night, and that is the way the fairies can affect time. But that tale is a famous tale, and not the only tale of the fairies from Clonmacnoise, but the most famous tale. Yeah, it's one that's stuck through time, and even today, children are fascinated by that story.
So are adults.
Yeah,
I sit enthralled. Um, this is fascinating. What do people believe up there about them?
it's a kind of mixed bag. I suppose most people would never admit to believing in fairies, but I know people who do still believe very much in fairies. And in Scotland, and I think in Ireland as well, fairies are not these nice little female Tinkerbell style,
Hmm.
creatures. Fairies can be quite nasty, and you don't want to get on the wrong side of the wee folk, basically.
Right.
Um, that they're seen more as to be very wary of, and to be scared of, in fact.
Hmm.
And if you do look at a lot of the tales, it doesn't end well for the mortals. So yeah, there's still people believing them. There's still a lot of people. I've met people who believe that they're in the walls of houses and things like that.
Hmm.
So yeah, it's nothing's impossible as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
And I'm not maybe convinced that they're in the hill at Tomnahurich, but who knows?
Hmm.
Who
There can
knows?
be something someplace
Oh
that,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
There's you know another location that we do very often, which some of I know you've watched the Miriam Allen um, shows about their tour of Scotland and their visit to Touchwood House. Well,
Mhm.
Touchwood House has, for want of a better term, a house elf.
Okay.
Um, and that just blows my mind. It was something that the owner had never spoken to me about. We were doing an event there, and somebody was a bit wary and wanted to be taken out for fresh air. So our medium took her out. They were coming back in,
Hmm.
and this little green man scurried past them. And he's like, What is that?
Uh-huh.
And the conversation then went on to, Oh, you saw him? I didn't think he was still here. And from that, it was, we've never really got to the bottom of who he is. We the owner believes he's actually African in origin.
Okay.
Um, but at the filming of the Alan and Miriam show, I was invited along, and TV, the way TV is, there's always delays. And I was speaking to a few people I'd never met before who had worked at the house. And independently, without me mentioning a word, they both said, "Oh, and what about the little green man?"
Wow.
So there you go. It's not just our medium that's seen it. There's other people that are working in the house that
Mhm.
have seen him as well. Um, so fairies, yeah, why not?
Yeah. I have seen things with my own two eyes that
Yeah,
seem to fit the description of the Fey folk or the others or whatever name you want to give them. Um, I tend to be a bit of a believer from what I've seen. Not that they fit all the folklore, um, but I'm open to learning
yeah,
from a safe distance. Um, yeah.
yeah.
Oh, fantastic! It's I'm actually I don't usually admit that quite this publicly, but
It's all right. You're with them.
there
You're
goes my
with
credibility. But
yeah.
oh, what
But no.
about um in general, are people up there more superstitious about the paranormal? I hate that word actually for it, but beings that are other than our human breathing form, basically.
Yeah, I think to a lesser extent, probably in the last 20, 30 years, maybe it's starting to sadly, probably die out a little.
Mm,
The makeup of the Highlands has very much changed. There's a lot of incomers that have come into the area. Um, a, a lot of young people now leave the area for work,
mhm,
so they don't stay in the villages and things like that. But there's still a lot of superstition. What one of the stories I often tell on my walks is the fact that even in the early 20th century, in the Highlands, there was still a fear of witchcraft, and charms were still sold. Um, there were still stories of um, witches and what witches could do, and actual. In one case, there was in the early 20th century, there was a documented case where they believed this woman was a witch,
mhm,
um, and yeah, so yeah, there is that. I mean, and it's something as I think up here in the Highlands, people tend not to be in general as open about speaking about that, if we call it the paranormal.
mhm,
Um, but I've had a lot of people come up to me personally and speak to me one to one,
mhm.
and have been very open about experiences, but I said, look, I would never speak about this to anyone else, kind of thing, and so there is certainly still you know a fear of some, and in many cases, many people are of the opinion, you don't go near it, you stay clear of it. If it happens, but don't
Mhm.
don't interfere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and don't go looking for it.
yeah.
Well, no, I haven't been up to your area since 1984,
Mhm.
so my memory's a little bit rusty, and I would imagine it doesn't resemble what I saw in most ways. But it seemed like there were places that were incredibly, oh, magical, mystical, sometimes in a heavy sort of way. But I mean, with all the different battles and everything else that's gone on up there, there's a lot of blood on a lot of that land, and I would think it would leave an impact.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, actually, my son today wanted to go up and walk Culloden Battlefield, so we went up this afternoon, and he was actually commenting how at peace he feels. He says, and it's really strange because he said, I know what happened here. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and I says, well, you've got to. We were actually then got into the subject of ancestors because we do know that there was a couple of Shans that fought at Culloden. And I said, so there could be that connection. And Culloden is a very, very, for me, it's a sacred place, and for many
Yes.
Highlanders, it's a sacred place.
Hmm.
And there is something very special about it. Even though you know what went on, and the loss of life and the horrific
Right.
loss of life there, and what happened afterwards as well. But yeah, you're right. There is just places, and no more so than Culloden. I mean, Culloden's quite unique in that there's not many actually over here. It's not intact, but there's no. It's almost intact battlefield. It's most battlefields in Britain have now been built over, or whatever, but they're
Right.
lost. I
Hmm.
mean, even Bannockburn, they don't know exactly where Bannockburn was was fought. They've got an idea, they know where part, but they don't actually know. I think that the whole scale of it. Whereas at Culloden, they've got a much better idea of the scale, and even though they don't have, as I said, the entire battlefield, they've got a good chunk of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And 38 years later, Culloden is one of the places I was thinking of actually.
Mhm.
it still leaves a mark on me. A very kind of a haunting mark, but not in a bad way. It's a very special. You're right. It's a sacred place.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, and it's. I tend to go there when I know it's going to be quiet. So I don't tend to go up through the day, and normally it's evenings and things like that. I'll go to and walk the battlefield. But I always find the battlefield a calming place to go if I need to clear my head or anything. I'll
Right.
go up, park the car, and walk the battlefield. It's very popular tourist attraction, especially with Outlander.
Hmm.
So that whole pool, Outlanders pull so many tourists into this area, and obviously Culloden is a mecca for that
Right.
because it's got a big part of the story in the books. It's
Okay.
got the Fraser clan Fraser marker, grave marker as well. So yeah, it can be very busy through the day,
Yeah.
but well worth a visit. Absolutely brilliant. They've now got a very good exhibition centre, which is well worth a visit. And you can actually go into a room where you stand in the middle of the battle, and it's
Oh,
something else. It really is something else, and I really do recommend it. It's well worth, as I said, well worth a visit there.
excellent.
Interesting enough, it's a site that we as a paranormal group have said we'll never investigate, simply out of respect. That it
Right.
is, it's just one that we've always kind of said, we draw the line there. We
Yeah.
we wouldn't do there. So yeah, but there is sightings. There's documented ghost sightings at Culloden. There's also, going into the more folklore side of it, there's a thing called a scree. So scree is like a big black bat-like, almost human bird, which, if seen, it's supposed to be like bad news. There are reports that it was seen by the likes of Lord George Murray, who was one of the main Jacobite commanders, on the eve of the battle,
Okay.
and it has been over the years seen there at other times as well. So yeah, even there you've got your folklore
Mhm.
elements.
That makes sense. I think the closest we would probably have in this country would be Gettysburg, the
Yeah,
battlefield.
yeah,
And we have a lot of other battlefields that are as important or more important, but again, a lot of them have housing and shopping malls and stuff encroaching more and more. And um, Gettysburg, they were able to put a lot of it under national parks, even if some of it's still farmed and such. And I was there, I was a teenager, but um, it's the distances here are rather large. It's probably 2,000 miles away from me. Um, and it was fascinating historically, but the feel of it was fascinating as well. And there are ghost tours that are allowed there. I'm not sure if investigations are allowed officially, but I know people do them. And I want to go back and carefully sit and experience it again now as an adult. You have to be careful. They have cottonmouths, eastern diamondbacks, copperheads, God knows whatever else over there that'll kill you with a bite. Um, you guys just have adders.
I,
Get
don't- yeah, I was going to say, yeah, we got it easy here.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and over there, I'm scared I'm going to step on an adder. Um, but it's I'd like to go back and see what the place tells me because it's another one of those where there are lots of recorded sightings, and I've known people that have had visual and audio experiences there. And
yeah, one of the things that's been happening at Culloden is there's been attempts to build on the battlefield or on the outskirts of the battlefield, and one development did get the go ahead despite a lot of campaigning to try and stop it. And I remember at the time somebody talking and asking me about it, and I actually says, well, take Gettysburg, and I used the example of Gettysburg and the locomotive. I think it's a locomotive depot on the railway at Gettysburg, where I think there's at least 17 recorded ghosts.
Okay.
And it's, I said, well, personally speaking, I wouldn't live in a house, up there. Absolutely not. But yeah, so Gettysburg, I've always kind of Gettysburg from I've used always as a kind of reference point when people have gone on about development at Culloden and said, well, it's not a good idea.
No, it isn't,
No.
and it's disrespectful for the people and the history and everything else.
Yeah.
Um, let's see.
Yeah, Lawrence is spot on there. I mean, it really is. It's and thankfully they've pushed back now on everyone,
Good.
which is really 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 good.
Do you have the same push? England seems to be really taking a back step on preserving its history. The major archaeological school is being closed. Money is being cut out of projects. If Stonehenge isn't careful, they're going to lose their UNESCO World Heritage Site status. And are you having that problem up there?
Actually, recently I actually posted an article on my Facebook page about Historic Scotland. So Historic Scotland are basically now saying that we may need to just allow some sites to decay, that we can't afford to protect every site any longer. Um, and that made me very angry, actually,
Yeah,
because that's their job. They're there
yeah.
to protect. And to me, I think the problem is that it's like everything. Everything becomes a business. Everything, is about profit, unfortunately. And a lot of the time, heritage seems to be one of the first things that we forget about. Inverness as a city is an absolute prime example. If you see some of the buildings that have been demolished in Inverness
Mm,
and what's replaced them, it's criminal. That's the
right.
easiest way to put it. And Inverness is very famous. It's got the what we call the shoe boxes, concrete shoe boxes, which in the 1960s they demolished a lot of kind of old townhouses and things like that.
Uh-huh.
Um, and that's something that every Inverness local is angry about, basically, or most of us anyway, to this day. And they are now talking they're going to knock down these concrete boxes because they are just absolutely hideous. And I just saw popping up on the screen there from Lauren said about the old High Church. So the old High Church in Inverness is the oldest religious site. St. Columba is said to have actually converted the Picts to Christianity on that site. That site is also the first documented um, sighting of the Loch Ness Monster in
Really?
565 AD. That's when Columba was there. One of his followers was swimming in the river, which is just down below the church. And it's said that a great sea serpent raised up from the water, and it's said that Columba banished it to Loch Ness, and that is your first documented sighting of the Loch Ness monster. So yeah, it's fascinating. But the old High Church itself, sadly, has just closed. In fact, it was only last night was the final service, a closing service for it. But that's a building that, as I said, it goes back to 565 AD. There's been a church on that site basically ever since.
Right.
At the time of the Battle of Culloden, it was used as a prison after
Okay.
the battle, and actual Jacobite soldiers were actually executed in the graveyard. and the stones are still there to show that. And it's so sad to see that that building's now at risk. We don't know what will happen to that building. Um, and it really needs to be protected, but there doesn't seem to be any attempt from any of the heritage organizations to come in and say, hey, we're going to save it. um,
I thought
it's
there was
listed.
the Historic Churches organization.
No, we've got the two organisations basically here: Historic Scotland and the National Trust for Scotland. That's
Right.
that's the two organisations that basically operate in Scotland. And yeah, it's unsure. I think some of the local businesses are looking at things, and I did read that there's a possibility that it could become an arts venue. Um, as well. But it's, as I said, it's actually got a copy of King James's Bible inside as well. I mean,
Oh,
that's I think there's only 20 something of those Bibles exist.
right.
Um, it's got artifacts. It's actually got a silver plate from the 1740s that would have been in the church at the time it was occupied by the government
Hmm.
soldiers. It's got a lot of World War II relics, because it's also a chapel for one of the local Highland regiments.
Hmm.
So there's various things in there of that as well. So yeah, it's really, really sad, to be honest. To me, it's the most important building in Inverness,
Hmm.
and I really hope it can be saved.
I do too. There's got to be something. I think England has uh, maybe that's where the Historic Churches organization is to try to help. It's not like National Trust or something. And I understand money, but you raise more, and the government needs to provide more. Um,
Yeah, I think religion in Scotland is on the decline. There's no question about that, and there's a lot of churches have closed.
mhm.
Um, and the congregation had a hard choice to make. They operated out of two churches, which church they kept and which church went. And I think the running costs of a church that is so old,
Right.
was just too much. So as I said, I hope something can be done with it. It's something that I think should be there for the public to be able to go in and look around. And um, you know, I think there's opportunities there to do
Right.
things with it, and I really hope that it can be saved.
Well, and I
Uh,
know too, a lot of times a Christian site that old is on top of a pre-Christian site that could go back hundreds or thousands of years. I don't know if that one does, but it wouldn't surprise me.
yeah, I don't know. It was originally called that area was had a different name. It was St Michael's Mound, and but that whole part of the I do apologize. Sometimes they call it a city, sometimes they call it a town. Inverness became a city in 2000, but to me, it's always a town.
Okay.
Um, but that part is kind of the old town, but it's also it was the religious kind of center. So you've actually got the old Gaelic church, which is basically almost attached to the old High Church next door.
Okay.
But you've also got another two graveyards where you once had a Dominican priory, and you also had another chapel over in another graveyard. So there's a lot of activity in that area going back a long, long time. Yeah, so it is quite possible.
Yeah. Well, in the graveyards there, I would think would help keep it from being destroyed or built up at least. I mean,
Yeah, well, graveyard is. This is the interesting thing. The church is owned by the Church of Scotland.
mhm.
The graveyard is actually owned and maintained by the local council here, so the local
Oh,
authority. So that the graveyard is as I said, is maintained by them. And again, it's something that a lot of tourists come and look at and see. And with Outlander as well, it's now got that connections to Culloden, so therefore a lot of Outlander fans do visit that graveyard as well, through the summer months, to
right.
see the stones. And there's two very distinctive stones where the executions took place.
Okay.
And so yeah, so hopefully it can be saved.
Yeah, I hope so. I keep forgetting about um things like Al Outlander and different shows because I don't watch them and I don't read the books. I like the true history books and
Yeah,
um, the stories the stories in real life are better than the made up ones or the
yeah,
ones based on it. To me, anyway,
yeah.
for the most part. So um, I
I think
forget about all these.
The Scottish tourist industry are quite happy. I think with, I mean, the
Hmm.
Outlander has, probably been a bit of a savior for the Scottish tourist, and has given it such a huge boost.
Yeah,
Um, and For me personally, I think I grew up with the Jacobite stories and Culloden and whatnot, but to see the passion that I see in people that have been brought into this, um, by the books and by the TV show. I think it's brilliant. I mean, we've got there's a local Inverness Outlanders group,
okay,
and the amount of work those guys do to promote this area, um, is just unbelievable. And they've actually got an Outlander guide, so you can get a map which will take you
right.
around the various locations that are referenced in the book, in the books and whatnot. Um, so yeah, they've done it, that do a heck of a lot to promote the area, as well. So yeah, it's got its pluses and its minuses. At times, I think if you go to Culloden, for instance, they've had to actually fence off the Clan Fraser grave because, um, it's just basically been trampled all over.
Uh-oh. Yeah,
Um,
that's one of the downsides sometimes.
yeah,
But and as long as the history comes out that's correct. One of my problems so often is people watch a a show that's based on history to whatever degree or books that are, loosely, and they think that's the truth. Well, it isn't necessarily. And um, if it's a great way to get people there and then educate them, I think I like that. And Scotland, I mean, I would think tourism's one of your bigger industries, isn't it?
oh yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
I mean, it's up here, especially in the Highlands. It's
Hmm.
we'd be lost without it. I mean, we do have the Loch Ness monster to as a backup, so we're not too bad. We're not too
Uh-huh.
bad. I mean, I think, but yeah, numbers. I can't remember the figure, but the numbers, the increase in numbers with the connect, what they call the Outlander effect,
Hmm.
is huge, absolutely huge. And to be fair, I think it popped up on the screen there just now. There is the writer, and she has done her research. That a lot of it is fairly accurate, and the
Good.
portrayal of the key characters and,
Hmm.
and, and, and that in it. So I mean, I haven't read the book, so I don't know how good the Culloden and the battles and things like that actually are, but certainly in the and in the TV series, yeah, it was good. It was really good, and I enjoyed them, and I didn't think I would, and I did. So yeah,
Okay. Excellent.
but
Excellent.
still not 100% by any means.
Uh-huh.
Yeah,
Yeah. Well, I tell people, when this is the same thing with ghost shows too. The producers, the people putting the shows on, the backers, doesn't matter how reputable, how much of a stickler for the truth the investigation team is. What shows on TV has been put there to make a profit for people. And that's the main point of the activity. And some of that is done with a lot of authenticity, and some of it's done with a lot of cheating. It just depends. And so I try to I take them all basically with a grain of salt, and I'm not trying to be insulting to anything or anyone. I'm really not, and I enjoy some of the shows and such, and some of the history shows, or the I've watched shows that are historical dramas, not documentaries, and I've enjoyed them. But then I also look up the facts to see how much they really coincide, and
yeah,
so uh, it's interesting. I
yeah.
actually I have a friend that swears he saw Nessie. He was sitting around the lock painting, and there she was. So,
Yeah,
according to him.
many people have. I mean, the last time I was actually at Urquhart Castle, which is on the banks of Loch
Mhm.
Ness, I watched three humps going across the loch. Now, I'm convinced that they were probably seals, but
Okay.
it looked impressive. It really did look impressive, and they were swimming against the kind of waves. So it wasn't like it looked really really cool. But I logically looked at it and thought, no, it can't be. It must be. That's what it must be. Um, but yeah, it did really look good. But yeah, people from all walks of life have said
Mhm.
they've seen something in the loch, and it's a strange place. So yeah, it's waves appear from nowhere, and it's it's so deep, and so who
Right.
knows? Who knows?
I wouldn't wanna go swimming in it.
I think it would be cold.
Well, that too, yes. But,
Yeah.
uh, actually, it's interesting. I took a boat tour around Loch Lomond, and they pointed out the manor house that and the duke had, moved into the Mews, and it was a hotel now, and this again, it was in '84, and several years later, I was working in an office in a oh, in a building that had shops and offices and stuff in it, and the woman with a heavy British accent that was working in the bookstore and I became friends and we're talking, and, um, she spent the war in that manor house. That was her aunt and uncle's, and,
Whole
uh
world, isn't
yeah, the duke that lived in the Mews was her cousin, and,
it?
you just it was amazing, that you actually see it and then you meet in Portland, Oregon. It's not like it was in, London or something. Um, but it was fun. It was fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, Lauren says it is very cold, referring to the lock.
yeah.
Now, are you gonna write a book about all of these?
Everybody says that I should write a book. No, maybe one day I will. I probably should. I think the folklore I do want to document in some format, whether it's in video format or written format. I definitely want to do that. I've been sharing some of the stories on Facebook, and yeah, I think they need to be. They need to be. I'd like to collect them all together. And put them together with regards to Inverness and whatnot. And but I've still got so many to like. I keep coming across new ones, so
Well, you
it's
just
going to be a few years off anyway.
yeah, when you can add them together and you have multiple editions. I
Yeah,
do know the Tom Muir and Rhonda, his wife, they have that publishing company focusing on folklore and stories and histories and not just on the Orkneys. So uh, that might be a connection to help get you the
yeah,
pieces.
yeah. Maybe something certainly to look at doing, and I would like
Yeah,
to do in the future. Another side of it is as well. People have said that I should really document the paranormal work that has been done, and I know one of the other guys in the team. He's talked about doing that actually. A lot of the private work we do, and
right.
documenting that without naming names and things like that, because we've done some fascinating work. In especially private work that is absolutely quite frankly mind blowing in places as to what's been going on in people's houses, and not always straightforward. This is a ghost. It's so yeah, it's maybe something again that we need to look at doing maybe down the road a bit, and seeing. But it never stops surprising us, and it's a great journey to be on.
Well, why don't you let us know about some of those? Switch into that a bit if you don't mind. What what kinds of things, some particulars or investigations that, well, whatever you want to bring up. I mean, it's
Yeah,
all fascinating.
I mean, one of the cases that is always fascinating me, and it's a horrific case actually. When we got down to it, was a a child was basically seeing this Victorian undertaker. That's the easiest way to describe this character. He was like a Victorian undertaker, and he was threatening the child that he was going to kill the parents if anything was said. It was horrific. Um, what transpired was that the child themselves had had serious trauma when they were younger, really, and that the character was actually not a ghost, it was a manifestation of this trauma.
Oh.
But what fascinated me about this case was we took our medium in who had no prior knowledge. The child wasn't there. We specifically, normally when we work in something like, we wouldn't want the child there.
Mhm.
Certainly not on the first visit, till we kind of got a grip of what's going on. But our medium was able to describe this man to a T. The energies were there. Even though the child wasn't there, the energies were there. And that absolutely fascinated me. And, basically, it was a manifestation. The psychologists that were involved, there were psychologists involved as well, and that's what they said. They basically said that this man, he wasn't real, he wasn't, but he was as a result of the trauma, and
Right.
that just, it's horrific, but
Yes.
it's fascinating as well, and it's fascinating that energy was there, so that our medium could actually, you know see this man, describe this man to a T. It really, really is fascinating. I mean, and then we go to the other end of the spectrum where we've gone into places and we completely debunked what's going on.
Hmm.
And again, we took a case where basically what was happening was the person that was living in the house, single parent, living in a actually in a block of flats,
Hmm.
and they had seen the ghost of a little girl.
Okay.
Um, the block of flats, actually, going back 20, 30 years, there was a little girl murdered in the block of flats. So
Uh,
straight away, the red flags are up, that, we've got something here. Um, we arrived, again, our medium hadn't been told, but straight away he's like, I know this place, I know the story, everybody kind of knows the story, so he's straight up with us from the start.
right.
He detects nothing. We go in with our equipment and we detect extremely high electrical magnetic fields in one room.
Ah.
And it was the high electrical fields that were actually causing the client to hallucinate.
Now, when you,
And
oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
yeah, sorry, and that is one of the one. If you're in a room, and some people are more sensitive than others, but if you're in a room for a long time, you can hallucinate. You can it can actually make you feel suicidal. There's so many horrible side effects from it.
Hmm.
Um, and we basically said you need to get the electrics in your house sorted. If you get your electrics sorted, you'll be fine. And they were.
Great. Now, what kind of levels are high that create that? Nobody's given me an answer.
Right. I would need to go and get a meter and have a look because I can't remember off the top of
Uh-huh.
my head of what the levels are. Unfortunately, I think actually over with yourselves there is levels. but over here in the UK, there is no such legislation or guidance around what levels are you know are seen as being dangerous. But certainly, when I go into a place with high EMF, it has a very heavy presence, and
Hmm.
tend to have a headache after about 20 minutes.
Okay.
Um, and and I don't class myself as spiritual. I don't tend to go into a location and go, oh yeah, there's definitely something here.
Hmm.
But with rooms with that feeling, I go in and go, oh, I don't like this. So
Right.
yeah, I sense that kind of feels myself straight away, even without need of a need of a meter, to be perfectly honest. But you're basically, your meters work green, amber, red, like a set of traffic lights, and we're talking red. We were talking off the chart.
Okay.
Uh, it was really, really high.
Okay.
Because a lot of things will give off a level
Hmm.
of electrical magnetic field. There will be some, certainly you take one of our meters near a fuse box, for instance, in a house, and it'll go off. It'll go off.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was extremely high in this place. We've done other ones similar and that's been the case. But yeah, it's but again, there's we've obviously got the ones where as well. These are the satisfying cases where, as much as it
Hmm.
sounds a bit corny, we help people sleep in their beds at night.
Right.
So they're the real satisfying cases where you're actually going in and you're making a difference for somebody, because that's why they've called you, and they're looking for answers. They're wanting, you know, they're hoping that you can put a stop to it. You do get the odd person who actually wants their house to be haunted, and
Right.
if you turn around and say, "Well, we can't find any evidence of that," they get a little upset.
Uh-huh.
I've had that as well. So, but we you can't make it up. You just have to go. And as I say to people, the other thing is you can't get a ghost to appear on command. So, we could go to a location and there's nothing there on that night. There's nothing there on that night. It doesn't mean that there's nothing there all
Right.
the time.
It just
So
means
yeah,
you weren't able to catch anything when you were
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
They have to want to communicate with us.
Hmm.
If they don't, you can't conjure them. They have to want to come and communicate with us, and if they don't, there's not a lot we can do.
Some of them have told me in the classes I do with psychic development, we're not circus animals. And I work really hard to make sure I don't treat them that way. But it was a good lesson for me that I need to be more careful about it. Because yeah, they aren't. Now I've got a couple questions with the man that was the manifestation of the trauma.
Mhm.
Was there a way that he was gotten rid of?
There actually wasn't much we could do, because it wasn't spirit. Um, it was something that basically all we could do um, was report back on our findings,
Hmm.
um, and basically that was all that we could do in that instance. They had actually gone to their psychiatrist and said, look, is it a good idea to get a paranormal team to go
Okay.
in? And it was a case of, yes, why not? So what we went back and we just kind of reassured and said, look, he's not here,
Right.
and you've got to realize that though he's saying horrible things and that, he's not actually here. um, and that's all we could do,
Yeah.
in that case, in that instance. And you do feel a bit helpless, but again, the other side of the coin, with and every paranormal group should know this, that you have your limits,
Right.
and you shouldn't overstep those limits.
Hmm.
You should never dabble in the, well, let's try this and see. You're dealing with people and people's lives, basically, and
Right.
the last thing we want to do is make things worse,
Yes.
um, in any way or shape or form. I think there's a question came up there around how long do we investigate a property? It really depends. In some cases, we go into a property and we can debunk what's going on, like I said, we did with that flat.
Hmm.
Um, we always say to anybody we go to, you know, if you need us back, we will come back.
Right.
Um, so, you know, often we actually only ever need to make the one visit. Sometimes we need to make more than one visit to a property.
Hmm.
Um, it depends what the client wants as well.
Hmm.
Sometimes the client is. We did a case recently where the client is very happy that they've got spirit in their house. They just wanted to know who that spirit was,
Right.
you know?
Hmm.
And that's all we did. We just went in with the whole thing of trying to work out who this spirit was. But yeah, you can get. We've done cases where we've returned and to properties before. We definitely don't like to. We definitely wouldn't walk away from a property without giving some answer and
Hmm.
some help where we can. But again, we work very much on the. We will only do things if it's right to do those. We feel it's right to do those things.
Hmm.
So we don't claim to be. We're not exorcists or anything like that. But our medium will ask spirit to go to the light.
Okay.
And that's been very successful. For us, we don't have many.
You
You
don't have
know,
many that
yeah,
c- repeat, you mean?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, Vivian's asking her, how do we come to a conclusion on one visit? Well, we don't always. It depends on the activity in what's being reported in the property, and it depends on the client. At
Hmm.
the end of the day, it's the client who they call us in. In some cases, we deal with it, or we give them what they're looking at on one visit. That is that simple. Other times it's not. But if we visit and then the activity stops, and that's what's happening on a lot of the cases that we do. The activity stop, or as I said, it's people who actually don't are quite happy with the activity. So they don't. We do a lot of cases with children,
Hmm.
which is something that actually still surprises me. The volume of cases we do with children as well. And you've got the other side of this, the story as well, is that some of the cases we do, it's not down to the property being haunted and things like that. And it's unfortunately down to the individual and maybe trauma that the individual's had in their own life at some point.
Yeah, I've come
Yeah.
across that too, where the dynamics in the house between people, there's a tension, there's different things, create an ind either attract an entity that
Mhm.
likes the chaos and the anger and that kind of drama, or it
Yeah.
creates one. And usually, if they change the dynamic in the house, let in the sunlight, put on cheerful music, keep fights outside, um, it goes away because
Mhm.
there's nothing to feed it anymore. And I've had cases where they they don't they want to get rid of whatever is in the house, and then I can talk to whatever it is and get open the communications and set up ground rules and tell the homeowners how to work with rules and set boundaries, and they're perfectly happy then
Mhm.
because they have a situation that works well. You talk about people wanting to um, keep, they're happy with the ghosts. I have friends here. I live in an old town. I mean, for us, an old town means it was incorporated in 1844. And these people bought an old house, a historic home, and later found out that it had been built by one of the couple's ancestors. And they loved the ghosts because they figured it was family. And they got done doing all the remodeling on the house, all the restoration, basically. And they've been quite sad that the ghosts haven't been back. So, because they missed them. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's fun. Um,
Yeah.
now, do you do cases or are you working on places too? I mean, there was the one place you mentioned not long ago, but where you're going out and public places or whatever. Some of the most haunted areas where I live are outside. Um, and are there what am I trying to say? Do you have other kinds of projects that you're working on that are producing interesting long-term research and study, and trying to develop and put together patterns and such?
Yeah, I mean, there's places that we revisit on a regular basis, and no two visits seem to be the same, which
Hmm.
is which is fascinating. I mean, one of the topics of conversation a lot within the group is graveyards and whether or not graveyards are actually active.
Hmm.
If you speak to our medium, for instance, he goes, "Oh, not another graveyard. There's nothing here." But we do try to do, we don't do what we call working graveyards. So we don't go into graveyards that are still in use
Okay.
and whatnot. We're always respectful when we go into graveyards. We
Oh yeah.
tend to stick to graveyards that have got other stories connected to them.
Hmm.
Uh, may have a ruined church, for instance. One I can think of which is supposed to be like haunted by a minister of the church. So we go to these kind of places, and we've done these on a more regular basis. And as I said, you just don't. I don't think I've ever gone to a location and got the same on two occasions. We do some events as well. Though we're non-profit, we don't charge for what we do or anything like that. But
Right.
we get asked to do events, and we'll go along and do events. So we do an event regularly in through in Aberdeenshire, actually, in Portsoy. There's a house there called Durn House, which is now a kind of guest house hotel, not hotel really, I suppose. And it has a fascinating history. Again, it goes back to the Jacobites and before the Jacobites, but a lot of stuff went on around the Jacobites. The house, I think, in some point in the 1900s, basically was abandoned. It
Uh,
was derelict. The current owners that have got it now, they basically restored it. So, and all the furniture that's been brought into it is not the original furniture. But what it seems to have done is it seems to have brought in spirit as well as some of the spirit that was connected to the house as well.
okay.
We've done that one on a regular basis, and we do have the one ghost that constantly, well, not constantly, but he normally appears, a character called Bert. So
Right.
Bert was actually a servant to the master of the house, and Bert, with his master, were at the Battle of Culloden. We've got the records. We know they were there. We know that after the battle, Bert helped his master, basically disguised him, along with the cook, to look like basically like a tramp, and
Hmm.
escape under the noses of the government soldiers. And he went into hiding for a long time before he could come back.
Okay.
So we did what we used dowsing rods a lot on events and things like that. And they seem to work.
Uh-huh.
And I do have a theory that maybe at the end of the day, spirit from 200-300 years ago, they're probably a bit scared by fancy boxes that light up and things like that. So with Burr, we actually ended up having a 15-minute conversation using dowsing rods. And it was a young girl, well, she was late teens. Um, and for 15 minutes, I managed to ask, she was holding the dowsing rods and we were asking questions, getting the rods to move and in whatever way, even trying to trick him. He
Uh-huh.
was not for it. Same answers, got the correct answers every time. He then got to the point where he actually started laughing at us. So we asked him to spin the rods for how many spirits were in the room with us, and the rods just started going round and round and round and round. So we actually then asked, "Are you laughing at us, Bert?" And yes was the answer to that. We liked the ladies. We discovered that,
Uh-huh.
and we then the rods were handed to somebody else, and that was it. Nothing. So I think it was the last time we went to Durn again. We split into two groups, and my group, yeah, we got no Bert, no sign of Bert at all with us. And Lynn, who was taking the other group, says halfway through, she goes, "You seen Bert yet?" No. She goes, "He's with us." All right, okay. They had in their group another young red-headed girl, and Bert basically he was quite happy to talk with the roads with her. So we
Uh-huh.
think Bert likes his red haired ladies.
Okay.
Um, yeah, so that was pretty cool actually. So yeah, we're quite fond of Bert.
I like that. Those stories are fantastic. Here's another
Yeah.
one from Vivian.
Yeah, I have actually visited. I've not investigated Greyfriars, but I always make a point when I'm in Edinburgh to go to Greyfriars, and I've stood outside the Mackenzie Mausoleum on loads of different occasions.
Mhm.
I don't get anything at all, to be perfectly honest. The the Mackenzie Poltergeist is an interesting story because the Mackenzie Poltergeist only really appeared, after the story goes that basically one of the a homeless man on a terrible night broke into the mausoleum to try and get a dry warmish place to sleep, and he fell through
Right.
the floor, breaking open one of the coffins, and
Mhm.
that seems to be the Mackenzie story comes from that point on of the poltergeist. Lots of reports of people being scratched, feeling sick, pushed. Not happened to me, but yeah, it's an interesting story. It's a wonderful graveyard, amazing graveyard. It is a must, actually, for anybody who's into graveyards and the paranormal, and it just has the most amazing memorials, especially if you like your behind me, your memento mori. In fact, that image on that T-shirt is actually a photo I took in Greyfriars in Edinburgh.
Okay.
So that's one of the symbols from Greyfriars.
Yeah.
Mackenzie was an evil man in life,
Oh
and
yeah.
even in death.
Mhm.
If you go back into the history of Edinburgh, once he was dead and in the mausoleum, kids from the local school used to still come up and rattle his mausoleum and see if he would chase them out of the graveyard. So there was always that fear of him, definitely. And yeah, the Mackenzie Mausoleum is worth a visit, definitely worth a visit. The problem with Greyfriars now is it's so popular that it's very hard to go there, and it's not full of other tours and whatnot. And it's also got the Harry Potter connections because J.K.
Oh,
a lot of the names from the books come from that graveyard. She used to walk
okay.
around the graveyard. And Tom Riddle, for you Harry Potter fans,
Uh-huh.
his grave is there. There is a Tom Riddle grave, and it's another one that's very popular for people to go and visit. But yeah, it's a great place. It's got a great atmosphere. And yeah, if there is a graveyard that is really haunted in Scotland, it's got to be Greyfriars in Edinburgh.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I
Yeah.
watched one of the documentaries the tour people had done or something, and it was fascinating to me. And next trip I want to go. I didn't know about it when I was in Edinburgh before. So
The Mackenzie Poltergeist would not have existed in 1984.
no,
It's not.
that's right. It was later than that. Hmm.
Yeah, it was later than that.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's taken another twist as well because recently the mausoleum was broken into.
Uh,
Well, no, sorry, I'm saying broken into. That's not fair. A tour company were given the keys, and they went into the mausoleum and they broke open one of the coffins, um, and it's now a police investigation. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see where that one goes. But it's Yeah, because obviously that is against the law. You're
Oh,
not
that's
allowed to.
horrible. Well,
Yeah,
it's against ethics and morality and anything else.
yeah.
Uh-huh.
But as I said, there's a fascination with Mackenzie that just seems to continue and continue.
The
Um,
t the tour group, was it the one that originated the tour through there?
I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not
I
sure.
hope not, because those guys
Yeah,
seemed like they were
yeah,
decent human beings.
yeah,
I'm
yeah.
hoping I'm not wrong, but,
Yeah,
um,
I hope, as I said, I don't know the ins and outs fully of it, and it's a shame, and to me it seems to be just an attempt to stir up some more publicity, but it's backfired.
yeah, well, I'm
As you
glad it
said, it's
backfired.
wrong on every level.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, no,
yeah,
that's horrible.
yeah.
Well, do you have any other particular cases that stand out to you or places you've investigated that have been particularly, I'm not trying to say spooky or scary, but just really fascinating?
Well, I was going to mention actually because of the American connection. I was going to mention the Strathpeffer Pavilion. I think we've spoken about this,
Right.
uh, not in chat before. So the Strathpeffer Pavilion. Strathpeffer's a kind of small village, a Victorian spa village,
Mhm.
and the Strathpeffer Pavilion um, was built in the late 1800s as part of that complex. But it's got a fascinating history. You've got Ernest Shackleton has talked there. Emily Pankhurst has talked there. Um, Teddy Roosevelt, I think, has been there.
Oh,
Pretty
wow.
sure he has. Yeah, pretty sure he
Uh-huh.
has. Um, the Beatles. This is my favorite story. The Beatles were playing um, at nearby Dingwall Town Hall to 20 people. This was about 6 or 7 months before the Beatles became the biggest band in the world.
Right.
The gig was rubbish, even by their own account, and
Uh-huh.
they basically they finished we're packing up, and one of the locals said, "Oh, there's a gig in the pavilion." So they went to watch the concert in the pavilion, where 1,500 people had turned up to see a local band playing. And I just love that story. It's so Highland. It's so it's brilliant. But yeah, the Beatles have been there. But getting back to the American connection, during World War One, the pavilion was used as a U.S. naval hospital. Um, and when I first kind of was introduced to this, I kind of thought, yeah, probably it was never really used, even though it was set up as one. However, it was used, and there was over 1,000 patients through it in a year. They were actually shipping by train sailors up to, recuperate at Strathpeffer. And basically, I think it was from New York. They took a whole hospital staff from one hospital in New York and took them over to run the pavilion. Um, so we were called in because originally to do a private investigation of the place, because during some renovation work that was getting done, um, one of the painters had had some activity. 100% non-believer before this started. He was petrified by the end of it, and so we were called in, and we did a private investigation there where we caught some great stuff. We caught footsteps in the main hall. It's a wooden floor. It was heard on the night. It's on the audio as well. It's like somebody walking up to the group, pausing, checking them out, and then walking away again.
Mhm.
Um, the word American was picked up on audio
Okay.
as well, and some strange mists were captured out the back of the pavilion where we believe the morgue would have been. There was 3 buildings out the back that are long gone, and we believe one of them would have been the morgue. So we were actually asked to go back and do a charity event for the trust there. So the Strathpeffer Trust do a lot of good work for the community. They put on a Halloween party event. They put Christmas party event on for the community and things like that. So we said we'd go back and do that. And one of the things I wanted to try, which we'd used before successfully, was music. And playing music from different eras,
Hmm.
to see if we can get any activity. And the pavilion had, as I kind of mentioned before, it had been a kind of dance hall concert venue. You had some very big bands in the 60s and 70s played there.
Hmm.
So I took my playlist, but the other thing I did was I researched popular World War One American tunes. So we put the playlist on. We played it through the. We actually played it through the PA system in the hall. So it was pretty epic that side of it. But we played a couple of tunes. Absolutely nothing happening. Nothing happening. And then we played a tune called "Over There."
Oh, yes.
Yes, and oh my, the K2 meters just went crazy. And we repeated this 3 or 4 times where we played all the songs, and every time that song came on, that was it. It was crazy. So it was like, yeah, we're pretty sure there is an American spirit still there, or within that, whether it's a doctor, a nurse, or a serviceman, I don't know.
Hmm.
But yeah, and it's another, as I said, it's a beautiful building. And if you Strathpeffer in general is beautiful. It's always worth it if you get a chance to visit. It's well worth a visit. And on a side note, the room next to it's called the pump room, where the actual spa waters come in.
Oh, okay.
They've actually got in there a fireplace which is identical to the fireplaces that were on the Titanic. It was actually built by the same company in the same year as they fitted out the Titanic. So it's just yeah,
Oh,
just
that's
crazy.
fantastic.
Yeah, fantastic. Touchwood House, as I've mentioned before, in Inverness, it's a guest house. It is, I would say, it's probably the most paranormal, most activity I've seen in a building. Nothing nasty or horrible at all good spirits. But yeah, it's a magical building. And I always say to people, if they're coming to Inverness and need somewhere to stay, Touchwood House is the place is the place to go, especially if you're into that, into the kind of spooky side of things. And it's you just don't know what's going to happen there.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so well worth a visit. Um, Other places, yeah, it's weird. Sorry, when we were in Edinburgh.
Uh, oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry. Should I take it down to
yeah,
mention
yeah.
that
Sorry,
again?
yeah. There's always people in Greyfriars. I think I've managed a couple of times to be in when there's been just one or two people, but
Hmm.
you normally the last time I visited a couple of weeks ago, actually, and it was getting busier again. So yeah, it's a hard one to actually go in and get it really really quiet. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's still worth a visit, even if it's busy. Go, you'll regret it if you don't.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, I'm trying to think what I was talking about there.
Oh, I'm
But
sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt
oh, no,
you.
no, no, it's fine. I just I mean, as I say, yeah, Touchwood's
Yeah.
great. I have found, I think I probably mentioned this last time, I found that some of the places that are hyped up, I don't know
Hmm.
how other people feel, but what their kind of experiences are. But a lot of the places I've gone to that have been hyped up as active
Right.
are a disappointment. And I've gone into places where I now I don't do it anymore, but I used to go into places where I think, oh, nothing's going to happen here, and that's where you get activity.
Uh-huh.
So I've always found that fascinating, because it's always this thing. A lot of what is experienced is suggestion, whereas to me that suggests, well, that's not the case, because I'm going into a place where I don't think there's going to be activity. Um, so yeah, I've gone into a few places that are hyped up, and they've been a disappointment. But then again, as we said earlier, you can't command spirit. So
Hmm.
maybe they just decided, nah, don't like the look of you. We're not going to do anything tonight. But
But there are
yeah,
places that do hype it up. It's part of their business model
yes,
to get people in, and
Yeah.
I know some of those places have been exposed for what they do, some don't. Um,
Yeah.
I think it gives everybody a bad name when that happens, but
Yeah, I mean, but that's unfortunate. I mean, that's a huge challenge in the community that we work in is
mhm,
the fact that you've got um, most weeks in the press, for instance, there's a stupid article about, I've seen a ghost and here's evidence of a ghost, and clearly it's not.
mhm,
Uh, and to the cynics, it just adds fuel to the fire.
right.
Um, and it's the same as you said about your paranormal TV shows and that when some of the evidence that they're putting in front of you at times is just you just think, really? Don't
Mhm,
get me wrong. Sometimes they're putting stuff in front which is mind blowing.
right.
But again, it just the cynics. To be honest, I think with the cynics, I just simply say you really need to see something or experience something, and it'll be different. You'll feel different, and at that point,
Mhm,
um, you know, we did the last time we actually did Darren House. One of the first questions I always asked the group is, right, who's a believer and who's a non-believer here? I like to gauge the room,
right.
and we had a gentleman who was um, non-believer, ex ex RAF, yeah, stiff upper lip, very 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 proper.
Uh-huh,
Um, Within 10 minutes of starting the event, our medium had turned round and said, "There's a dog standing beside you." Well, he just crumbled. He just was like he'd lost his dog 7 months beforehand, the dog that never left his side. So, yeah, um, he was a believer by the end of the night, along with other things that went on.
yeah.
Um, and yeah, that gives me a bit of satisfaction. Even my journey. I mean, I started out very, very, very skeptical,
Uh-huh,
and I still am. I feel guilty at times because I go in and you know, I almost destroy people at times with, well, that's not a go. That's not.
uh-huh,
And I do feel horrible for doing it, but I think at the same time you've got to be honest and if you put your own kind of viewpoint across and say, well, no, it's not, but there is something there,
mhm,
without question. And you know I've had experiences, seeing, being touched, and a woman whisper in my ear, all sorts over the years. So I'm a believer that there is definitely um something beyond what we know right now.
mhm.
I believe it's energy. It's definitely energy related. Um, but as I said, the search goes on for
It
that one
does.
piece of evidence that just goes, yeah, that's it. You've nailed it.
Mhm,
We had another experience in a private case where everybody in the room witnessed a white aura around our medium. Everybody in the room was clicking away on their cameras and mobile phones, and it didn't appear on any of the photographs. Yet everybody in the room saw it, witnessed it. So, yeah, you then go down the route. Do we have the technology right now to capture, spirit?
yeah,
Yeah,
not a lot. I don't think a lot of things we can capture. Um,
no,
and I don't think we fully understand even if they are if it's energy or what. I think we still don't fully understand it.
no,
And I'm the same. I believe because I have seen things with my own two eyes that I cannot find other explanations for.
yeah,
I have seen physically. I was 8, I think, when I saw my first ghost, and it was another kid, and so it wasn't spooky, it was outside in the middle of a nice sunny day. Um, but that and then other things I've seen since that they're it's just the way it is, I believe. But I wouldn't expect somebody who's never had a direct experience to take my word for it, um, because I would have listened, but I wouldn't have been convinced. until I had the experiences. And there are too many fakers out there, and people have to be careful.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's a lot of people want to believe,
Hmm.
and you know that again, it's a challenge to to try and work with those kind of people as well at times.
Yeah, here's another interesting question from Vivian.
No, I actually haven't, but I tell you what we have done in the past when we've had Gaelic speakers with us. We've called out in Gaelic and we have had some success. Unfortunately, we don't actually have a Gaelic speaker in the group right now, but we have in the past had a couple of guests with us who speak Gaelic, and we always take the opportunity um, to do that. But to be honest, that's a great idea actually, because that kind of goes on from the music element again.
Hmm.
Is is to try that approach. Yeah, might dress up and see if we can do anything. That would be pretty. That'd be interesting. Yeah, I'd fancy trying that. So thanks, Vivian. We'll maybe give that. We'll let you. We'll certainly let you know how we get on if we do it. But yeah, we've used Gaelic before and some success because again, yeah, it's down to the old joke, isn't it? I've seen the memes of Ghost Hunters International in a castle in Germany, and the ghost responds in English. So yeah, it's why not? It would make sense actually, probably to try
Hmm.
that. Yeah.
Well, we've had some luck with it. Here, I do living history. I used to give ghost tours, so
Mhm.
I have clothes from they're based on the 1860s. I had them made, and it can make a difference when you go in. And what about trigger objects? Things like, oh, we did a projectionist in an old theater. We were up in the projection booth, and the guy was a heavy smoker and a heavy drinker. So we poured out a shot of whiskey and had opened a pack of cigarettes for him, and that got things rolling a bit. Things started
Mhm.
moving around on their own, um, and that was fascinating. Of course, we thanked him, and I think we left the the whiskey and the cigarettes there for a while to they didn't go away. Unfortunately, he didn't drink it, but um, we didn't want to just take it right from under his
Yeah.
nose either once the experiment was done, and
Yeah. Yeah.
makes a
Yeah,
difference.
we've had some success. We've had some success with trigger objects, and you're right in that you don't put generic trigger objects don't seem to work. You need to come with a trigger object that is going to mean something for what the spirit that you think's in the building. So we had a private case where I believe the building had been owned by I think it was World War II, maybe World War One general or something had lived in the building.
Mhm.
And Lynn, our researcher, and I don't know how she had them, but she had bullets from that era, and we used the bullets as a
Okay.
trigger object, and they moved. Um, we've used crosses before,
Mhm.
where we believe that there's been people connected with religion, ministers, and things like that. And again, we've had movement um, with them as well. So yeah, we've had some success. It doesn't work all the time, obviously, but yeah, they're another great idea. And I think it does go back to what you were saying. It's getting the period things from that period, things that they're going to recognise rather than modern contraptions
Mhm.
and whatnot. I mean, I was fascinated, and I'm ashamed to think that I never really thought of this before, but I was watching an interview with a medium, a French medium, and she was basically saying that she had gone back to the 12th century. She was in a castle, and she'd
Mhm.
gone back to the 12th century, and she'd connected with this man, but the man could see her, and the man was terrified. He
Right.
thought he was basically calling her a ghost,
Right.
and it was like. well, hang on a minute here. Yeah, we of course. What do they see?
Uh-huh.
You know, and is the other side of it is with a with that kind of thing. And are we actually talking about almost like a time slip where we're going into that whole other world of two points in time basically clashing and meeting up? Is that
Ah,
what could be going on?
right.
Um, it's absolutely fascinating to think that, yeah, it's as I said, it's something that I'd never really thought much about before. It's
Mhm,
what do they see? I'm so busy. I feel very selfish about it now, but thinking about it now, but I was so focused on what I wanted to see that I wasn't really thinking what they're seeing. So I'm very much more mindful of that now. And,
mhm,
again, as I said, what we find with the dowsing rods and things like that is that the dowsing rods seem to be, you know, almost everywhere we go, we can get dowsing rods to work. And, one of the weirdest things was some people go, well, if they're working all the time, surely they can't be active all the time. When we did our last event at Durn House, for instance, we had dowsing rods working in the room in one of the
mhm,
bedrooms, and the medium that was with us, guest medium, she was like, I need to get out of here for a couple of minutes. There's this man, he's really affecting me. And she went out the door, and two of the guests said they felt a whoosh, as if something fast followed her out the door.
mhm,
She was outside for about 5 minutes. During that 5 minutes, the dowsing rods did not move in the room. She
mhm.
came back into the room, and the dowsing rods began to work again.
Fascinating.
Yeah, yeah. And it's like, well, go figure that one. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
I
There's
wonder,
only one. Yeah.
my biggest concern with the dowsing rods is that it's so easy to move them slightly without even knowing you're doing it, and to do
Oh
it
yeah, yeah, yeah,
subconsciously.
yeah.
And, um, I'm wondering if there's a way to put them in a stand, like a wooden stand sometime, so they can spin freely, but they're not being moved at all, so that we can be sure, um, that it's the entities that are moving them, not even a subconscious thought or a tremor.
Yeah, I mean that's actually a really really good idea. I mean, one of the theories is obviously that the dowsing rods work through your energy, that the
Mhm.
spirit's using your energy. But I mean, what
Uh,
we do with dowsing rods, we're asking for specific movement.
mhm,
So we may have yes or no, left for yes, or we may be going actually and instructing which way we want the rods to be moved and
right,
what manner we want. And that 15 minutes, as I said at Durn House, I was really random. I was asking it to do all sorts of things with the rods,
right.
and it did it every time. Um, and
And
that's not. I don't think that can be manipulated, and I
okay, that
certainly don't think. And she's the lady herself said she'd never used rods before.
okay.
Um, and so yeah, it's I don't know. I don't know how easy it would be to move them.
And this is
I've
maybe
tried,
another.
but I've never managed to. Yeah, I've never
Yeah.
managed to. Vivian saying you can put a. I missed that one, but
Oh,
I
I'm
think
sorry.
put dowsing crystal in a bottle. Yeah, yeah,
Okay. And I
it's
hadn't heard
true.
that one too.
No, I've not
Um,
tried it.
we've also, or I've got Tim Roby. He's been on my show before too, and he's an archaeologist by occupation and training,
Hmm.
and mostly a Neolithic Bronze Age period archaeologist. But he's had success using dowsing rods finding archaeology,
Yeah,
and
I I spoke to an archaeologist many years ago now, and he was telling me that they were doing an archaeological survey on a field where there had been a graveyard,
mhm,
and they were using geophysics, so radar. and some old guy had showed up with his dowsing rods and said, would you mind if I douse this field?
Uh-huh.
And they kind of had a chuckle to themselves and said, yeah, on you go, kind of thing. So he basically went away and he did the field, and he came back and he passed in this map
Hmm.
where he mapped out all the graves. They took their geophysics and they put their geophysics on top of his map, and it matched perfectly.
Hmm.
Yeah, and they were blown away. They said they just, it was like they've spent thousands of pounds on this modern technology. This guy's turned up with a pair of rods and done exactly the same.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, it took a bit longer, but yeah, it's fascinating, and that is the other side of the dowsing rods. And you're saying the manipulation. It's what other factors are there. If
Right.
there's water, for instance, or another fascinating thing I find with the roads is if I go to a site like Clava Cairns, which is a Neolithic site,
Hmm.
there's stone lines that kind of move off in one direction, and every time you walk across them, the rods change direction and go away in the direction of the stones as
That's
well.
interesting.
So there, you're then thinking ley lines going to pick up these energy tracks as well. So yeah,
Have you
it,
checked to see if the rocks in those lines are magnetic?
no, actually, that's one thing we probably should do at some point. It's a very old site.
Right.
We've never gone. We have investigated Clava, but when we've investigated Clava, we've investigated in a very different way to how we would normally investigate. It's done in a very spiritual manner,
Hmm.
more than throwing lots of equipment or anything at it. It's one that's probably, as I said, never been investigated by us with a lot of equipment going in. Um, because it's again, how do we even start to think about communicating with um, you know any individual from that far back in time?
That's where the medium comes in.
Yeah, yeah. So
And that's part of what I love doing. Yeah.
that's why we
Yeah.
worked with the medium on that one and took that approach with it. Um,
When I
so
get over there, I want to go to that site. And,
yeah,
because that's part of what I love about traveling to ancient sites is seeing at least what I can see, if not communicate with. And
yeah,
let's see, this is one too. It's Norman Fahey she's talking about,
yeah,
I believe.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, and it goes back to again. It's fascinating. It's the old ways, isn't it? It's
Yes.
that's what I love about the dowsing rods. It's as much as I'm a geek and I love all the shiny kit.
Uh-huh.
I love the old ways, and the dowsing rods is the old way of doing things. And um, I am now a firm believer, as I said earlier. I think that a lot of spirit that from further back in time probably feel a lot more comfortable as well with a set of dowsing rods than they do with a K2 meter or something.
Hmm. Well, and I found too, just um, the way we act can make a difference too. Protocol, manners, so many things were so different. Geez, even in my lifetime, I remember when women wore gloves out at night and a hat and um, all kinds of things. But if you're going back 100, 300 years, and so often I bring this up in investigations and classes, we'll have women in shorts and a tank top, and the men get away with a little bit more, but I mean, this is scandalous. A lady of negotiable affection would have more clothing on than what is common. And I'm not knocking today's fashions or people wearing them. I'm just saying the impression it gives the entities, and especially if you're going to a place that hasn't had a lot of interaction with modern people necessarily, where the entities haven't, so they're not used to it. Um, they can be really quite prissy about it, or um, oh, I've been in places where, where the women are getting hit and elbowed, and the men aren't having any problem because what do you mean you speak for yourself and you have your own checkbook and your own job, and what are these gene things on your legs, and how dare you? And um, oh, I also had somebody in an investigation get punched or poked in the bum with an umbrella because she was in the way. But anyway, that's a different story. But I find all those things can, in the right place, make a difference. And it's interesting to play with that, I think.
Yeah, actually, that's what you're saying there to me is really interesting because I'd never kind of thought of that angle of it before. But we, as a rule, it's the females that do get hit, that do
Hmm.
get pushed and prodded and touched. So maybe that explains it in some ways. It's interesting as well from the point of view that when you're saying that, because another character from the kind of, folklore is not the right word to use it, the Bran seer, who
Hmm.
is a very famous seer who predicted rightly a lot of things about the Highlands in his lifetime. One of the his prophecies was around Inverness, and it was that Inverness women would basically, I don't can't remember the exact words, but would run loose and naked around Inverness. And you're spot on. If you're from his time and you came and
Hmm.
saw how a Friday or Saturday night in Inverness, yeah, you would probably say you would say that. And I mean, this is a guy that, for instance, if we go back to Tom Nahurich, which we was talking about at the start, he came up with two predictions. One prediction was that tall ships would sail to the west of Tom Nahurich, and the
Okay.
Caledonian Canal was built to the west and is basically just to the west of the hill. He also said that the hill of Tom Nahurich would be under lock and key, which as a cemetery it now is. So yeah, I totally get that. Yeah, that makes
Hmm.
absolutely perfect sense. Well, I think Vivian came in there and said, as you do more, do you become more spiritual? Yeah,
Hmm.
I think you actually do. I'm certainly
More
a lot more
sensitive, she was saying.
sensitive. Oh, so you're sensitive.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think you do. I think it is something that even me, the old skeptic, you do go in and there's certain
Yeah.
places and certain things you just think, yeah.
Yeah, we learn more.
And I've been affected. I mean, I used to kind of, I won't get affected. I'm not spiritual. I'm not going to open myself up. But I've had a few occasions where I've had to sit down and or get out of a room
Hmm.
because it's something is affecting me.
Yeah.
Durham House, I went into the first time I was there, I went into one of the bedrooms, and immediately I was, I don't like being in here. And then I was basically headache, real migraine territory. Had to sit down. Um, because we were doing the event, I kind of kept going. Came
Right.
out of the room, I was absolutely fine. Been in
Hmm.
that room probably another 20, 30 times since, never had the same experience. However, a medium basically said, yeah, this woman basically attached herself to you. As soon as you came in, she went to you.
Hmm.
Um, so that was interesting. And the pavilion in Strathpeffer was, again, there's a balcony at the back that you can go up to. And
Hmm.
when I went to see them first and do a walk around. I went up there and straight away it was like, whoa, don't like this. Felt sick, headache.
Right.
Went back up later. I said, I'm going to go back up. I want to go back up to see if I feel the same way because I thought maybe there's a reason. Felt
Hmm.
fine. When we
Yeah.
did the event, we had, I think there was 4 men, 6 women, or something like that. So all 4 men, including myself, had to leave the building. The
Wow.
women were fine, but all 4 of us had to go outside and get fresh air. All the same headaches and yes, feeling sick, nausea,
Hmm.
and yeah, it was just really, really, really strange. But when all 4 guys independently, that's myself, one of the actual members of the trust plus two guests all have the same symptoms, yet the women were absolutely fine. And again, I went back up there late in the evening to film, and I
Hmm.
was fine.
Yeah.
So yeah,
uh, Fantastic. Well, I think everybody is psychic. I really think it's part of our ancient DNA that kept us from getting eaten by saber-toothed tigers as often and dodging somebody else's club. And we just live in a society that um, tends to overshadow that or teach it out of us or whatever. But it's still there and it can come back. And it can come back surprisingly, like with some of these experiences, or you can learn to bring it back and control it. And it's it's a fascinating world.
yeah, oh
It
yeah. I mean,
opens so much more. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, and certainly our team medium, has said the same. He says everybody is spiritual. He says it's just a case of that, you kind of have to open up to it. And
Hmm.
I while I say I'm not spiritual, I always say to people the one thing that always happens to me is I will see somebody, look at
Hmm.
them again, and it's not the person I think it is, and then I'll walk around the corner and meet the person that I just thought I'd seen, and that happens to me time and time again. So, that gift. I don't know if it's a gift, but that's maybe it is, maybe it's. But I've never managed to avoid anybody yet. So um, that always happens to me. So I can't explain that. You know?
Right. Oh,
Yeah,
that's interesting. I love it.
yeah.
Um, we have been doing on for an hour and 46 minutes, believe it or not. Um, do you have anything you want to put out there before we thank the guests or the audience and end this end this show for this time? And um,
Just a
mm,
massive thanks to everybody who came on, and thank you for inviting me on. Hope I'm not bored you.
oh
Um,
no, I
yeah,
mean, we still have people watching and commenting. We have a lot of great comments. Lawrence of Alba, Lawrence Alba has posted several things on here, and you can see a lot of it's been conversations among the group in the chat, and I didn't
so
want to post everything up, but
I'll do it later,
yeah,
definitely. No,
and
it's always fun to do,
yeah,
and yeah, I mean, come over to the Hide and Ghosts if you're not following us already on Facebook. You can
mhm,
follow our adventures over here in Scotland. From there, and I said we hope to do a lot more. I'm hoping this year through Highland Ghosts to do a lot of live walks,
good,
just visiting graveyards and various places, and doing the whole. It's a bit of storytelling as well.
hmm,
So yeah, really, really want to do a bit more of that this year. I've just bought a microphone for my phone so that I can be heard a bit better.
okay,
And so yeah, I'm hoping to do, as I said, a few graveyards and a few other locations, and tell the stories. Um, Also hoping next month, hopefully, we're going to be doing an actual. I've done one walk on Tomnahura Hill where it's been
hmm,
all about the folklore. Um, but next month we're hoping to do one with Lorraine Evans, who's she's an Egyptologist, death historian,
oh,
graveyard
you told me
archaeologist.
about her, and I still
Yeah,
need to get her book.
yeah.
Hmm.
So hopefully Lorraine has volunteered to come and do the walk, Tomahawk Hill with us. So I'm really excited for that, and she's so knowledgeable, and she knows the hill very well from from a grave point of view. So
Hmm.
sharing those kind of fascinating stories with people as well.
If you make sure you get the links to me, I know I've liked your Facebook page, but I don't always see everything going through. Um,
Yeah,
Send the links to me, and I'll put them out on my social media too.
yeah, yeah. As I
And
said, I mean, a lot of the live stuff I do, I just do it. I don't announce I'm going to be doing it. I just turn
okay,
up somewhere and think, right, weather's good today. Let's go for it. I mean, to be honest, Edinburgh, I was going to do. The last time I was in Edinburgh, I was going to do some stuff, and it poured rain all day, and it was just like, there's no way I can do anything today, unfortunately.
Right.
But yeah, as I said, when I come across any kind of interesting location, I'll certainly be filming it. And we're really hoping, even from a paranormal point of view, as a group,
Mhm.
we've never really gone down the avenue of filming, um, but it's something we're kind of starting to look at now as well,
Good.
because we know so many people are interested in that kind of thing that
Mhm.
we may go down the route of, as I said, trying to film some of our investigations and stuff like that,
Right.
and make them available to people. So yeah, good.
Well, and YouTube and just even looking them up, the videos on Facebook and such, whatever. Um, Liam is also a brilliant photographer, everybody. Um, I I see his pictures on Facebook and Instagram, and they always help make my day. They're beautiful, and they have a lot of not just beauty, but soul and personality in them as well. So,
Yeah,
Liam,
you're
thank you
too kind.
so much, and I
Thank
look
you.
forward to the next time. And everybody, I look forward to talking to you again soon. Oh, there are links here, and I'll have this up on Facebook and YouTube before long, so people can share this with friends and spread the word. So, thank you all very much. And Liam, I can't thank you enough. It's been fantastic.
Thanks again. Thanks everyone. Bye bye.